Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 161 of the Hammer Territory podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you deep in the night here on a Sunday evening in March, and I'm joined, as I always am, by Scott Coleman. Scott, we were fearing some bad news, and instead, it was not really bad news. That's a rare feeling, huh? What's going on?
Hello, Brad. Isn't it nice to do a podcast after an injury scare, a very, very, very scary potential injury to an important player for this team? And lo and behold, after everything that went wrong a year ago, the Braves finally seemingly came out on the right side of an injury. Of course, we're talking about Jurickson Profar, who thankfully seems like he's going to be okay. And I mean, frankly, when I saw that injury yesterday afternoon, I thought it was the worst, and I thought we were going to have to do a really unpleasant podcast tonight, but thankfully it is not that way at all.
That's right. And if anybody missed this, number one, you should listen to our show from Saturday that our colleagues Sean Coleman and Stephen Tolbert did, reacting to the injury before the news that we know now is pretty good news. But I agree with you. It did not look good. And then there was a report that it was going to be Monday before we found out the results of Jurickson Profar's injury. He had an X-ray right away that was negative. So I was like, all right, not broken. But of course, that's not the end of the story. Always going to have an MRI or a CT scan or something else. And we actually got a little bit of a leak. I will say, we're recording this podcast late Sunday night. The Braves not released anything official on Jurickson Profar. With that said, reading between the lines, as we often do on this podcast, I'm fairly confident that they told the beat guys some information today because they all had the same thing. Bowman, I think Ken Segura is down there for the AJC right now in Justin's place at the moment. But multiple people had similar phrasing, similar reporting, and the expectation is, long story short, it's a wrist injury. Obviously, people could see the video if they want to. It didn't look great. If you don't believe us, you can watch it for yourself. It's out there for you. But CT scan, and basically it's a bone bruise. That's what they're saying. At least that's what the reporting is pointing to. And of all the things that it could have been, that's probably the best case scenario, especially because, again, it's March 9th right now. Opening day is 18 days, or I guess 17 days if you're listening to this podcast on Monday. And all signs right now, as we're recording this, point to him being at least on track to be good to go by then. So he couldn't play in a game tomorrow. He has an injury. But, again, pretty good news, Scott, all things considered.
Great news. And wrist injuries are scary. What Profar did on Saturday afternoon is something that we have unfortunately seen a lot in baseball, where an outfielder goes all out for a ball, which, going all out and diving for a baseball in spring training.
Yeah, please don't do that, Jurickson. Thank you.
I get it, man. These are competitors. The instincts kick in, all of that. But let's not have somebody shatter their wrist in a spring training game. But yeah, I mean, a wrist is a really, really complex part of the body. Not only do you have bones, but of course, many tendons and ligaments. I kind of feared the worst when it all went out. And I guess the fact that the X-ray initially showed no break, or at least no obvious break, that was encouraging. Brian Snitker after the game also was kind of upbeat on the injury and said it seems like they had dodged a bullet, but even with Austin Riley and Orlando Arcia the last couple of years, we have had X-rays come back negative, and then 2 days later, it's revealed that they have a major injury of some kind and will miss time. So very, very good news here for Profar and for the Braves, and I'm guessing he's probably going to need at least a few days to let that bone bruise calm down, but maybe he's back in the lineup by next weekend, and that would give him close to 2 full weeks to get ready to go for the regular season, which is obviously something that's going to be helpful for him as he tries to rebuild the strength in the wrist and get back on the field.
Yeah, you mentioned it just now. I mean, the wrist is not an injury that is a small thing like that. You, as a hitter, and this is very obvious, but as a hitter, the wrist is very important. It's not like something that you can kind of navigate around. I know he's a right-handed thrower, but he's a switch hitter. And you can't get around your wrist being a big part of your swing. That's just the reality of the situation. So you got to be healthy there. When I say that there's absolutely no chance that he misses opening day, I'm wired to say that there probably is still a chance. Expectation of being ready for opening day does not mean definitely going to be ready for opening day. But I think that even if he's out for a couple days at the beginning of the season, that is different than what it could have been. Like if it's a break, or if it was something with the ligaments in the wrist that you mentioned there, or the tendons, that could have been a multi-month injury. Not even that could have been a long time. And thankfully for us, Scott, we don't have to do the deep dive version of this. But just to say this out loud, if he wasn't available to play, we were on the verge of a outfield on opening day of Michael Harris, who's great, and then Jared Kelenic and probably Brian De La Cruz. And that would have been the full outfield on opening day in San Diego, which I think no one would have been terribly excited about. Granted, before they signed Profar, we talked about that a lot, actually, for like about 2 months. It was like, is it really going to be Kelenic and De La Cruz until Acuna comes back? But I guess that probably seems to be avoided at this point.
Yeah. And the Braves have a really tough schedule to begin the season. We already know for certainty they're not going to have Acuna. They're not going to have Strider. And they're probably not going to have Sean Murphy for at least the first week is my guess. I mean, I don't know. I'm spitballing, but I would imagine that Murphy will return that first home week of the year, which is the second week of the season against Miami and Philadelphia.
I would say at the earliest, honestly. It wouldn't surprise me if they were even more careful with him. But anyway, your point stands.
Yeah. So you're playing some really good teams. You are already down 2 superstars, and when he's right, 1 really good catcher. So thank goodness we did not have to have a situation of Kelenic, Harris, De La Cruz. Eli White would be the backup outfielder at that point. God forbid something happened to one of those players. So again, that is very much the theme of this opening segment. The Braves dodged a bullet. I think we will have to hold our breath just a little bit to make sure that Profar really is good to go and has his grip strength and full range of motion and all that. Because, I mean, frankly, a bone bruise in the wrist sounds pretty damn painful. But it could have been so much worse. I mean, it could have been half of a season, maybe a full season if he had to have a really bad surgery. So thank goodness, after everything that went wrong for this team a year ago, the Braves came out on the right side of an injury, and let's hope that Jurickson's back out there sooner rather than later.
Totally agree. We can leave there for now. For the most part, again, we'll probably get some official something from the Braves on Monday, because they were the ones that said, like, hold on until Monday, basically, before they kind of leaked out some information today. And we're recording this Sunday night. So if you're listening to this podcast Monday afternoon, evening, we might have an update by then, and we'll cover that if anything changes in the coming days. But in the meantime, a giant exhale from all of Braves country at this point. All right, Scott, let's get into some more stuff about today's game and more. But first, a word from our partners at Foul Territory.
Kratz, do you like spending an hour on grocery shopping?
Nope. Speed up the process, please.
Introducing Hungry Root to the FT fam.
Now we can all be bougie with our own personal shopper to handle the food shopping, including recs based on what you're looking to put in your body.
I stack my Hungry Root box with items like gluten-free, dairy-free blueberry waffles for breakfast, shrimp veggie bowls for lunch, and a little filet mignon with potatoes and broccolini for dinner.
You can also say just, hey, Hungry Root, I eat paleo, or I'm vegetarian, and they load up your cart with personalized recommendations.
And those recs keep evolving as they learn about what you're into. Also, no BS, as in no artificial sweeteners or preservatives in any of Hungry Root's food. You're going to love Hungry Root as much as FT does. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/FT and use code FT. That's hungryroot.com/FT, code FT to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life.
All right, Scott. Sunday's game was not the most enticing to discuss. A couple of just brief notes here, because we're recording this podcast on Sunday evening, and the games previously were covered by Sean and Steven. It was a light day in terms of regulars that even appeared in the game. You had, I believe, Ozuna was in there. Kelenic played, and Kelenic is currently a regular for the Braves. But I would say the big angle of the game was the pitching side of things. Smith-Shawver pitched. What do you think of what was out there for Smith-Shawver? Because obviously he's a great note right now, not necessarily for opening week, but given that he's maybe their top pitching prospect still at this point in time, and a guy that could figure this year, that was maybe the lead thing for today.
It was not a great start for AJ Smith-Shawver on Sunday afternoon. He was facing a pretty close to normal Red Sox lineup. Alex Bregman was in there. Trevor Story was in there. I mean, it was not the AAA Red Sox by any means, although Boston has a hell of a minor league system right now. So, but regardless, not a great start for Smith-Shawver. I think he gave up 2 runs in the first inning, gave up a couple of doubles. But he did settle in nicely after that.
Yeah.
Got some more swing and miss, which was really encouraging. I think he ended the day with 4 strikeouts over 4 innings, which is a good sign for him. So maybe not his best performance of the spring, but as we know, sometimes pitchers are going out there with one specific purpose to really work on a slider or a cutter or a changeup or whatever the pitch and plan was for today. But I really do feel like at some point in the season, the Braves are really going to lean on Smith-Shawver. maybe it's a perfect world and they get healthy seasons out of their big four. But as we have seen for basically every year now, the Braves are going to lose somebody at some point, and hopefully Smith-Shawver is able to step in and give the rotation a boost, similar to what Spencer Schwellenbach did a year ago, where you really don't see a massive drop-off whenever he takes the mound.
Right, and it was good that he settled in today, and nothing alarmed me that I saw, which is good. I mean, it's funny coming a day after, and I know Sean Steve talked about this a little bit on yesterday's show, but basically everyone's velocity was down on Saturday, and it caused a lot of panic about Orlando Lopez. And I remember that now because of what you just said about how guys are tinkering and trying things. And Ronaldo clearly was like not, he was trying some stuff during the start on Saturday. We don't have to go back into that again now, but his velo was kind of all over the place. It wasn't physical from what everybody was saying after the game. So as long as you're healthy, I'm not particularly worried about anybody's velocity at this point in time. It wasn't like crazy low, which it wasn't by the end of the start. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's that time of year.
It is a scary time of year for pitchers. You took the words out of my mouth. The Yankees just lost Garrett Cole. Probably for the year. They just lost Rookie of the Year, Luis Heel, for probably half of the season, if not more.
Max Fried's all they got. Shouts to Max Fried. He's all they got up there in New York.
Max is going to earn his money this upcoming year, trying to stay healthy and leading that rotation. But it's a scary time. Grayson Rodriguez also just suffered an injury for Baltimore. I mean, you look at every team right now. Also, just a quick note, the Mets just lost their starting catcher. Francisco Alvarez has a broken hamate bone in his
Of course,
hand.
after our preview of the Mets, I go down. Unfortunate. Never root for that. By the way, never root for injuries, and that includes us and the Mets. We don't want to see that, but it is notable for sure.
Yeah, a big loss for New York. Don't have great catcher depth. Alvarez was someone they were really banking on. So it's been a rough couple of days and weeks for the injury front. Of course, the Braves lost Sean Murphy. So let's just cross our fingers and hope the next 2.5 weeks are healthy before Atlanta starts the regular season.
That is the time of year. The other guy of note who pitched today and did not look good was Bryce Elder. Elder is, of course, on the periphery of the battle for the rotation. I think everyone would be surprised if Elder was pitching in the first week of the season. But certainly in that, as we've probably said ad nauseum, the Braves probably need 8, 9, 10 starters during the course of the season. He's in that range. I've made plenty of fun about his all-star appearance that is going to look insane for all time, but he earned it in the moment. I'll just say he gave back-to-back home runs today. He got pretty much crushed for 2 2/3 innings. It's a spring game. I'll be consistent. Nothing that happens in spring games I'm not going to overreact to, but it was kind of, I pulled this number on purpose. After his, I'll say smoke and mirrors, at least to some extent, first half-ish of 2023, his last 24 major league starts, he has an ERA of 6.07. And that's the guy that looked like that guy today. Again, and I've actually made this point recently on the show, even while being famously low on Bryce Elder, I don't think he's like a non-entity. Like, I think he's a very normal 6th starter for a lot of teams. Like, him being on the mound is not something we're going to be excited about. I don't want to speak for you, Scott. I think you probably agree with me on that. But if it's May or June, you got to throw Bryce Elder on a Tuesday against Miami. It's not the end of the world. But man, he did not look good today. And at least that was as we're talking about this one game, that was probably number 2 on the list behind Smith-Shawver. I was like, oh, that wasn't great.
Yeah. I knew Bryce Elder had struggled really for the last year and a half since that All-Star game. But those numbers, I mean, an ERA of 6.
Yeah, 24 starts is not the end of the world, and that part of that's cherry picking because it's basically when he fell off in 2023 until now. But that's closer to what he actually is than the first half was. I think if you all right, Scott, I'll ask you this, and I'll give my answer too. If you gave Bryce Elder the next 24 starts, what would his ERA be? It probably wouldn't be that, I don't think. But what would you guess it would be?
Yeah, high 4s, low 5s.
Yeah, I was going to say 5, which isn't like catastrophic, but it's also not someone you want to pitch. Even in the minors last year, we don't have to go crazy into this, but he was not like awesome in AAA. Like I think his ERA was 3.73 in AAA last year, which if you're like a good major league starter, you probably shouldn't have a 3.7 ERA in AAA. So.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is not breaking any ground here, but
no.
Chris Sale, Spencer Schwellenbach, Ronaldo Lopez, Spencer Strider at some point, I think we're all really bullish on Grant Holmes on the podcast. I think he's going to be able to stick in the rotation based on what we've seen last year and some of the pitches he's worked on this spring to really expand his repertoire. And one thing that Holmes really struggled with last season was facing lefties and also getting through a lineup a third time. That's not exclusive to Grant Holmes by any means, but if he is going to be in this rotation every day, you're going to want Holmes to be able to take the ball and not feel like you have to automatically bail every time the lineup turns over a third time. But I think in a perfect world, those 5 are good and healthy. I think A.J. Smith-Shawver at this point is clearly the 6th best option for starting games. I mean, if the World Series was tomorrow, I would take Smith-Shawver over Ian Anderson. I would take him over Bryce Elder, even if those guys have done it a little bit longer than Smith-Shawver. Who knows with Ian Anderson? I think I am firmly in the anything he gives you this year is gravy and you're happy about it. But based on the spring, just not a ton to be super optimistic about. Maybe he gets better. And then we know who Bryce Elder is. There's no.
I think we do. And again, it is better than the 6 ERA, I'm pretty sure, but it's also not the 2.5 ERA from that brilliant 3 months that he had back in 2023. So, no, you're right. I think the way that Steven put it recently, I believe it was on social media, about Ian Anderson is basically so far in spring training, everything that you believed about Ian Anderson probably still persists. If you were a believer, you're going to point to the ERA that he had, which is still good in the spring. And if you're not an Ian believer, you're going to say, look at the strikeout to walk ratio, look at the velocity. He doesn't look good to anybody. I don't think anybody that I trust has been like, you know who looks great this spring? Ian Anderson. The results have been okay as far as the runs allowed, and look, I can already hear it from comments. Isn't that all that matters, ERA? Well, yes, kind of, but also we do like to get into a little bit of process here, and process is more indicative than results at this time of the year, in my opinion. So you see what you want to see, and we'll see, but and again, the Braves seem to be on track to pitch Ian Anderson for a while this season, but that's another podcast. But that was kind of the big takeaways from today. I mean, unless you want to talk about Garrett Cooper, who bombed today. Shouts to Garrett Cooper.
I kind of like Garrett Cooper. I mean,
he's a professional baseball player. He's fine.
He can hit. I don't think there's a spot for Cooper on the bench, especially not being able to do anything but basically DH or play first base. But you know, Garrett Cooper, sure. Maybe he can stick in Gwinnett. Maybe he wants to be in the mix. That'd be a nice player to stash in the minor leagues. But if I had to guess, Cooper will probably ask to get another chance with another team. Should he not, should he be told that he's not making the opening day roster? But we'll see what the next couple of weeks hold. Maybe he can really, really hit and try to knock someone off like a Luke Williams or, who knows, Brad? We'll see what the bench looks like.
Bench bats. It was already a weird fit because of Matt Olson's, knock on wood, durability. But yeah, anyway, it's just one of those weird things. All right. Let us get into the other topic of the show. And that is our pal, former guest of this podcast, Mark Bowman of LB.com, did a kind of bullpen battle check-in on Sunday. Nothing revolutionary. It wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. Shouts to Mark again. But it was just a good time to kind of check in on the bullpen a little bit. Halfway during spring, basically. We kind of know the deal here. The top 4 is the top 4. You have Iglesias, you have Pierce Johnson, Dylan Lee, Aaron Bummer. None of that's new, right? Other than Brian Snicker did give a quote, I believe, that either Bowman or Grant McCauley, somebody had this, saying that Dylan Lee is, quote, ready for that next step, is what Snicker said. Thank God Brian Snicker is saying that out loud because we love Dylan Lee on this podcast. But other than that, the top 4 is kind of what it is. Yeah. From there, it gets kind of interesting. And I know there's a big split that I've seen in Braves country about Daysbel Hernandez, who I think we all agree is probably the 5th best pitcher in the bullpen. But because he has options remaining, and Alex tends to prioritize depth at all costs, which means if you have a decision on an option, you can have a guy go to Gwinnett. He tends to kind of do that sometimes. But I mean, is there anything else interesting to say? It seems to me he's not a lock to be in the bullpen. No one is saying he's a lock, which is actually interesting to me. I find that notable because in every preview that we've done this winter, it's been like, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's 5. If your 5th best guy is not a lock for the bullpen, it's kind of strange, but I think no one's saying he is, so it's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think the Braves would like to carry Daysbel to begin the season. I do agree. I would have more confidence in Daysbel than any of these other guys battling for a roster spot. But again, the dreaded minor league option for Daysbel it's not going to help him.
No.
We'll see how the next couple of weeks go. And in a moment, we're going to talk about the guys who are battling for these 3 or maybe 4 bullpen spots. But I think it's time to see what Daysbell can do. I know he has the minor league option, but he's not young. I mean, he's been around for a long time. He was quite good last season in a small sample with the Braves. The command worries me, but he also has just such good stuff and a ton of swing and miss with Daysbell that's really going to give him a chance to be a high leverage or even medium leverage option. And I mean, frankly, Raisel Iglesias is locked into the 9th. If Pierce Johnson is more or less locked into the 8th or maybe the 7th, if there's a weird lineup that night, I mean, you need a second righty and middle relief. Like that's a full stop need for this team. And if I had to guess of everyone here, I would pick Daysbell to fill that role for the season. But clearly, because he has options and because other guys in camp have performed well this spring, it is a real battle for 3 or 4 bullpen spots. And I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not the best situation in the world, but I think there is enough depth here. The Braves are going to be okay at the end of the day.
Daysbell has the highest ceiling. I think that's fair to say. And look, Bowman, what he wrote was definitely pointing towards Daysbell being likely to be in the bullpen. I think we agree that he's probably likely. It's just if you come down to a weird situation, you could just option him because you can. And to your point, you mentioned him not being young. I wonder if you poll Braves fans, they'd know that he's 28 years old. It feels like Daysbell is like this young hotshot. And he's not. He's 28 years old. So.
If you would have polled me like a month ago, Brad, I would have told you he was 24 years old.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So yeah.
I think we were doing a bullpen preview or something, and I was looking at Daysbell, and I was like, wait, really? He's late 20s. Every now and then a prospect who, not even a prospect, but someone who has been around the system for a while, in your mind, you just kind of pigeonhole them into one thing. But I was like, wow, Daysbell, he's going to be 30 in like 18 months. He's not a super young man at this point.
It happened with Baldwin. I think one of us mentioned Baldwin's age on the last show, that he's about to be 24. And we got a comment to our Twitter. It was like, I thought Baldwin was 20, and I was like, nope, he's almost 24. So people just, prospects and age, it's still a little bit strange. And anyway, Daysbell's not a young, to your point, not a super young player. So it might be just time to forget it and say, all right, you're in the bullpen, and I'd be on board with that. For the record, that's what I would be doing if
the Braves are just dead set on giving some of these veterans without options 2 weeks in the bullpen, 3 weeks in the bullpen, just before they shake hands and say goodbye. Maybe they really want to see if Hector Neris has anything left in the tank.
Yeah.
I mean, they obviously like him because they signed him a week ago, but Neris, unless there's some weird contract clause, he has to be in the major leagues. So it's, if your decision is Daysbell or Neris, I could see them saying, sorry, Daysbell, go to Gwinnett for a few weeks. We'll call you in a little while, even if that's maybe not giving the Braves the absolute best bullpen on day one.
And it also wouldn't necessarily be that decision. You kind of have to fill the other spots first. If this is spot number 8, it'd be so much easier to understand that give and take. But if who are the other 3? You know what I mean? If it's like Neris or Daysbell, I have a hard time getting to 3 more. But let's just say the name. So Hector Neris is the newest addition. If people don't miss this, he's a 35-year-old veteran. Was very good in Houston on the World Series team for the Astros a couple years ago. Was not very good last year. Not unpitchable, but not very good. And he's old. He's 35 years old. And he was available in early March. That's late February, whatever it was they signed him. That's at least something to keep an eye on. Then they have the Perdomo and Pilar faction. Perdomo is the guy that they have been basically rehabbing for a year almost, who was not healthy last year, who's not looked great in the spring. I think everyone's been saying that. He says, he looks great on the mound. He's 6'8", 260, whatever he is, but this monster guy. But he's not been particularly electric. And then Pilar's Rule 5, correct? If I'm just blanking on this. Yeah, Rule 5 guy. Swing and miss guy, but same thing. Isn't like lighting the world on fire. And if you don't know Rule 5, they have to return him, or at least offer to return him if he's not on the team to begin the season. And then you have the other guys. So what do you make of those? I guess we'll couple those 3 together. We talked about Neris, Perdomo, and Pilar. Do you have any feelings on whether your preference would be to keep those guys on the team on March 27th?
I don't think that Hector Neris has appeared in a spring game with the Braves yet, or if he did, I missed it, admittedly. But I would like to see him at least for an appearance or 2 and see what the stuff looks like. He's a veteran. He's been doing this a long time, so he's probably someone who can get ready pretty fast. If I'm wrong on that, Brad, please correct me. But
I am looking as we speak to make sure that you're not. So
live
there we go.
on the podcast. And then
No,
you know,
he has not pitched. He has not pitched in spring.
okay, I think I would have
You're right.
that would have like
Same,
caught my mind
but-
for a half second. But with Perdomo, I like the idea of him, and I'm tempted to keep Perdomo around because he was just really, really electric with the Pirates a couple years ago. But if he finishes the next 2.5 weeks without really flashing, isn't racking up the strikeouts, isn't overly impressive on the mound, you have a decision to make there. And Anderson Pilar is interesting because Pilar has gotten a ton of swing and miss. I think he struck out like 45% of the hitters or something crazy he's seen, but he's also given up quite a few hits and he's walked some batters as well. And as we know, that can be a dangerous game to play in relief. I really think, if let's say for the sake of argument that Daysbell is going to be on the opening day bullpen, that's 3 spots. I'm guessing that 2 of Perdomo, Pilar, and Neris are going to make it because of one other pitcher we're going to talk about here in a second. Maybe 2, maybe one of them only makes it. I don't know. There's also Buck Farmer. There's also Enyel de los Santos. Jake Diekman is sticking around. There's a lot of maybe not super encouraging options. Again, this time a year ago, Aaron Bummer was the 7th man in the bullpen.
Right.
And with basically 16 days to go before opening day, it is very much a competition for half of the bullpen spots.
For sure it is. And just to give a couple of fine numbers on Pilar, he has thrown 4 2/3 innings this spring. He has 10 strikeouts. That's fantastic, to your point. He also has allowed 9 base runners. So his whip's like 1.9. Whip's not the end of the world, but like it's been a base runner fest. Strikeouts are super high, but like it is very, very, again, tiny sample size, but it's been electric at times and not so electric at other times. And I'm with you on Perdomo. We'll see. The other guy, I think I was surprised by and what Bowman wrote. One thing surprised me the most. I'm going to read it for you. It's about Enyel de los Santos. And he's not been a guy that we talked about a lot, to be honest. But Bowman today wrote that he is, quote, more of a favorite than a long shot, end quote, which got my eyebrow raised because I hadn't heard that or seen that. This doesn't mean Mark's for sure right, but could be. It's come from somewhere. Someone told him that. And De Los Santos is 29 years old. He was actually quite good before in Cleveland. Was not good last year with 3 different teams. But he's looked great in spring by all accounts. It's 4 appearances, but the numbers are literally perfect. He's not allowed a base runner in spring. Kind of what you want, generally speaking, if you're trying to make a baseball team, to go out there and never allow anybody to respace. But I don't know anything else. Honestly, I don't know much about De Los Santos. I just don't. I've looked at the Statcast profile a little bit. There's some highs and lows. Like it looks kind of similar to a lot of these guys where like he seems to be like a fringe major league bullpen option on paper. But he's out of he's out of minor league options, according to Fangraphs, which I assume is correct. So another guy where he wasn't like as big of a name as Diekman or Farmer when he was signed, but is similar-ish profile to some of these guys. No options. It's one decision, and you either keep him or you don't. And that Bowman phrase, again, it's one phrase, but if that's even remotely true, let's just say it's a 55% chance to make the bullpen. That's higher than I would have guessed.
I think it's the first time you and I have said Enyel de los Santos' name on the podcast that we have done this spring. Brad.
If it's not the first time, it's the second time. It definitely has not been more than once before this.
Yeah. And again, we'll do our normal plug very quickly. Relievers, they're volatile. They're great. Then they're terrible. Then they're good. Then they're terrible. But for Santos, he was really, really good with Cleveland in 2022 and 2023. He was then awful with the Padres, and then he went to the Yankees, and then he went to the White Sox last year. The fact that 2 World Series contenders moved on mid-season probably tells you all you need to know about his performance. But the fact that Bowman, I'm sure that Mark heard that from somebody around the team, that he's, again, quote, more of a favorite than a long shot at this point. And the numbers speak for themselves this spring. And then the other arm in the bullpen, who I think is probably in that similar camp of more of a favorite than a long shot at this point, is probably Buck Farmer. Your man, local product, Buck Farmer.
I got Buck.
Buck, he's versatile. He can cover multiple innings, which is something the Braves are going to need in the bullpen now that Jesse Chavez is gone. I think Farmer has been a successful enough reliever with Cincinnati. He's done it for a while. Obviously, there's a connection locally. I'm sure it would be awesome for Buck to make the roster. So I'm guessing that if I had to handicap this just based on 2 weeks to go roughly in the spring, I think the big four are locked in.
Yep.
I tend to think Daysbell is going to be the 5th.
Yep.
Buck Farmer the 6th. Based on Bowman's comments, I think De Los Santos is, we'll call him, would be the 7th.
Yep.
Man, that 8th spot's really close. I mean, I could see really a case for all of them. I think Perdomo probably has the highest upside. I think Pilar has maybe a leg up because he is the Rule 5 pick, and the Braves would have to risk giving him back to Miami. Although, frankly, for $50,000, Miami may not want to pay it to get him back.
Oh, the other wrinkle I forgot to mention, and maybe you did, and I just missed it. Perdomo is left-handed, and Bowman even mentioned it in his write-up. It's like, do they want to carry 3 lefties? And if they do, he's the 3rd lefty. Like it's like he's kind of. Well, I guess that's not true. Jake Deep is the other guy. That we have not talked about on this show. We have mentioned multiple times before. He's the more veteran retread guy in his mid-30s option, whereas Perdomo is the younger, higher ceiling option. But if they want a 3rd lefty, it's one of those 2 guys. They don't have to have a 3rd lefty, but if they want one.
I'm guessing they probably will to begin the year. I mean, you think about having to go up against Shohei and Freddie and Max.
Yeah,
Muncy.
That's why I think it's likely they want. At least they want one. I mean, if I'm Alex, I'm going to have to really not like either of them in order to not keep one of the lefties. If I had to guess,
and that's also maybe that might be the biggest argument against having Daysbell on is you want a 3rd lefty. And you want to keep Hector Neris, or you want to keep Anderson Pilar and see if the stuff is going to play up in real games. I mean, without having watched every single inning of every single spring training game, were they line drives that Pilar's giving up, or were they soft singles the other way that just happened to squeak through? It's nearly impossible to scout every single spring game. So it's interesting. Again, I think basically 4 spots up for grabs. You have 6 or 7 pitchers battling for them. It would be great if you could sneak 1 or 2 of these guys to Gwinnett for depth purposes, and maybe that'll happen. Most of them signed as non-roster options in February or March for a reason. But the bullpen is for me one of the maybe 3 or 4 biggest questions for this team all year long.
Yeah, my only strong take beyond thinking Daysbell is a major league reliever is that Farmer is the best of this group. And maybe I'm slightly biased, but I think if you look at his profile, I'm surprised he wasn't signed by another team to a major league contract. Like I'm still surprised by that. I don't know why he was available, honestly. Not that he's some great pitcher. He's not a great pitcher, but like he's got an ERA in the 3s, like in the high 3s for like multiple seasons, like in the majors, like on real teams. So I don't really get it, but I'll be surprised. And I think Bowman will be too. I'll read the quote that Bowman wrote here. Farmer has, quote, created more reason to assume that he'll be given an opening day roster spot, end quote. So I think that he's the guy I thought the whole time would have surprised me almost if he's not on the team out of the minor league guys, unless he was bad in the spring. If he was bad in the spring, then write it off. But even the day they signed him, it was like kind of clear to me. I think even Justin said this is like he's a little bit more of a preferred non-roster invitee than most guys are. I think he was the inside track guy when they signed him. Not they promised him anything, but I'm sure that was communicated to his agent. Like, yeah, you got a real shot here, Buck. Like, why would you?
Very similar to Brian De La Cruz in the outfield.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah. Not exactly the same thing, but yes, similar.
Yeah,
similar.
Better than your non-roster invitee who's going to get cut 3 weeks in. I mean, this upcoming week, we're going to see quite a few roster cuts, I think. We start to get to the point in the spring where teams really start to evaluate, and without having the exact number in front of me, I think the Braves have like 25 players they still need to cut from it.
They're down to 45 in camp. I checked that as we were talking.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
because Steven was joking. Maybe it was you. I think it was Steven. That was like, you could convince me that the Braves are just like spinning a wheel as to when they announce these cuts. It's like 1 per day right now. Like for whatever reason, they're just cutting a random guy that has no chance once per day. It's kind of funny how they're doing it, but yeah, there's still a long way to go. But 18 days left. They got time, but by the end, and this, like the last day or two, there's like 6 guys that get cut. They don't wait. So they don't wait till the end to cut everyone, but they'll do some more obvious ones in the next couple of days.
Yeah. And sometimes player agents will hear from a team and, hey, we just lost our backup, utility infielder or whatever it is. Or do you get the sense that he's making the team with the Braves? If not, maybe you ask out. I mean, there's always stuff behind the scenes with players. All those veterans are just, I mean, they're fighting tooth and nail for a guaranteed contract, get that money, get your 600,000, 700,000, whatever the minimum is these days. So we'll see where it all progresses. But I think the next 7 days we'll really start to get some clarity on who's going to be on the big league roster and all of that good stuff.
We absolutely will. We are getting closer and closer and closer, and only we're literally 2 weeks away from the Braves going out to your neck of the woods for their final couple of spring training games in Mesa, I believe. Might have to just pay your way over there. I might just have to send you a check to take you to Mesa for a couple of days. Tell your employer that you can't be at work those couple of days. I'm kidding to some degree, but no. Busy week ahead. The Braves do play, I believe, every day this week, including 2 games on Saturday, a split squad endeavor, 1 at 1 and then 1 at 6. On Monday, they play against Tampa. On Tuesday, they play against Detroit. Those are both home games, and they're both broadcast games, I believe, or at least in some fashion, either MLB.com or FanDuel or whatever. Check your local listings, but action all week long, to be sure. So, Scott, anything you would like to add about what is going on with the Braves right now? We're kind of in the middle of this check-in zone with the Braves, but again, the big takeaway by far in the last 24 hours is the exhale on Jurickson Profar. That's why we led with that. That's number one by a lot. But unless you have anything else to add, we could sign off. But where can folks find you if they don't already?
Yes, thank goodness. Not bad news on Profar. Such a sigh of relief, man. I mean, this morning when the news came out that Profar's wrist was fine, it was just such a big exhale for all of us. Really good news for a really important player. Yeah, really good. In terms of my stuff, you can follow me at Scott Coleman at 55 if you so choose. Why would you? I don't know. I'm going to plug this one more time. Be on the lookout because this time in a week, we will have an NCAA tournament bracket.
Oh, yeah.
There's a chance we might get some Arizona, Michigan in the second round if we don't both flame out.
I'm in the dark. I'm in the dark place at Michigan basketball right now. They've been playing very poorly for about 2 weeks, so it's making me sad. But that's okay. It's been a good year overall.
It is the Beat Brad Rowland Invitational because beating me in a March pool is not hard. But I think we're going to do that. I'll send out the link. We'll post the link on YouTube and we'll tweet it out and all that good stuff. But it'll be for fun for Braves fans if you want to do a pool. Lots of good bragging right opportunities. So keep an eye out for that. I'm also hoping, fingers crossed, we're working on having an awesome guest this upcoming week. So I'm not going to say the name in case something falls through, but
you've learned well to not until it's recorded. Don't ever tell anyone what's going to happen in the future because things happen sometimes.
That is a professional tease right there. If you want to listen to that show, if and when it comes out, if you are not already, hit that subscribe button, the follow button, whatever it is you need to do. But we really do appreciate everybody sticking with the show this spring, and we'll be having real life baseball games to talk about here soon.
Yes, we will. Check it out. As Scott said, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Overcast. We're on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube right now, smash the like, smash the subscribe. And also, if you are a video watcher, we love you, certainly. Also, please do us a favor and subscribe on your favorite audio platform as well, and vice versa. If you are an Apple, Spotify listener, just smash subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to get that number up in the near future. We just crossed 2,000. That was a nice milestone for us. We'd love to see it, but let's get it going on YouTube as well. So, best way to support the show, obviously, is to listen to the show, but also subscribe, download all that fun stuff, ratings, reviews. Follow us on socials at Hammer Territory. We are on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook if you're still there, et cetera, et cetera. Scott, thank you for doing this as always. We'll be back in some form. I don't know if it'll be us next time or what. So stay tuned, everybody. And we'll have much more Braves content coming up. Opening day is nearing. March Madness is here. It's a good time for the hosts of this show, if nothing else. We like baseball on this podcast. So stay tuned. Subscribe to the podcast. We'll see you all next time.